Hey everyone, it's Keith here. My friends at Casio Australia recently sent me the new MWD110H to check out. And in today's video, we're taking a closer look at the 1AV model and sharing my thoughts on it. Like my other reviews, all thoughts shared in this video are my own, and Casio has not previewed this video before its release. With that out of the way, let's take a closer look at this new Casio. First off, my initial impressions on this watch. I love the design and colorway. The design looks futuristic, and the black, red and white text on the display gives me Gundam vibes. This model also comes in a dark grey and green colorway. The dark grey with inverted display and blue accents looks very beautiful. The 110H also reminds me a lot of the G-Shock GBX100 in terms of case shape and the steel bezel, but at a more affordable price of 149 AUD or 100 USD. Taking a closer look at the steel bezel, the text is engraved and you probably can't do any modding. The bezel seems to be secured onto the case by 4 plastic screws. I think these might be fake, but at the very least, all screws are aligned perfectly. It's very nice to see it aligned properly, especially at this price point. The bezel has a soft brushed finish that catches the light from different angles and it looks amazing. More importantly, the steel bezel adds more toughness and durability to the watch. Over time, I think the steel bezel will get scratched and have a unique worn-in look. Quickly touching on the glass, Casio's website states it's resin glass. It's also important to know that the glass sits slightly above the bezel. It only sticks out by less than 0.5 millimeter, but be careful that it could be damaged. It would have been great to see recessed glass on this, but I think it would increase the cost of the watch. Moving to the case size is pretty big and the shape is very similar to a G-Shock square, but this watch doesn't have a tough and durable shockproof case. The 110H comes in at 47mm wide with a lug-to-lug distance of 50mm. The 50mm lug distance sounds quite large, but the lugs are angled downwards. The case height is pretty thick and comes in at 12mm. The case and strap are made from resin and weigh 50 grams. Surrounding the case, it has 4 large buttons that are very easy to press. There's also a light button at the 6 o'clock position. It's located in a very comfortable spot compared to watches like the F91W, where you have to push down on a tiny button on the side. The backlight is an amber light on one side of the display. It's not incredibly bright, and I'd say it's adequate to read the time in the dark. It's also important to know that the watch has a 10-year battery life and it will be shorter if you use the backlight a lot. Flipping over the watch, it has a screw-down stainless steel caseback and offers 100 meters water resistance, which is quite impressive. Moving to the display, I love the layout and design. The surrounding black and grey border creates a lot of visual depth. At different angles, the border casts a shadow onto the main display at the bottom. Also, the red and white text around the border isn't very distracting, and I think it's done quite well. Taking a closer look at the main display, the time at the bottom has large text and is very legible at a distance. Above the time, it has a countdown bar in increments of 10 seconds, which looks amazing. It's a fun way to display the seconds, and I've enjoyed staring at that bar ticking up and down. Just above the countdown timer, it has the 100 meters water resistance text. Moving to the right side of the timer, it has a mode display separated into 4 quadrants. As you cycle through the modes, it shows you what function you're using. Lastly, at the top of the display, it shows the day, date, and month. The text is quite small and can sometimes be a bit tricky to read. It would have been nice if the text was slightly larger. And that's a quick look at the overall layout of the display, and now let's take a look at the different modes and functions. Inside this Casio, it's running on the 3517 module and has a timer, stopwatch, alarm, and dual time function. Quickly going through each mode. In the timer mode, the primary display shows the timer, and the secondary display at the top shows the current time. One cool thing about this display in the timer mode is that the countdown timer goes in the opposite direction. It's a minor detail, but gives the impression that the timer is counting down. However, in the stopwatch mode, the countdown bar ticks upwards like the home screen. As for the alarm mode, I don't use the alarm on my Casios, but this one also has a beeping sound when it goes off. In terms of alarms, it has a daily alarm and an hourly time signal that beeps every hour. In dual time mode, the main display at the bottom shows the second time zone you've set, and the current time moves to the top of the display. I think the execution of the dual time works great on this display. Both time zones are very legible, and I think it works much better than the Casio AE1200 world time. The display of the world time doesn't show a digital clock of the home time. It only has a tiny screen of an analog clock, which is very hard to read. The dual time on this Casio works much better, and I find it much more useful. And that's a quick rundown of the different modes and functions, and now let's see how this watch wears on the wrist. This is how the 110H looks on my 5.5 inch wrist. The watch feels very lightweight and has a lot of wrist presence. It feels and wears very similarly to the 5600 series of G-Shocks. The combination of the articulation on the straps and angled lugs make this watch wear well on my small wrist. The resin strap starts at around 24mm and tapers down to 20mm. For my 5.5 inch wrist, I'm using the last hole on the strap, and the other end sticks out a fair bit. Like other Casios, I wish they came with a shorter strap for people with small wrists like me. If you plan on swapping the straps, the lug width is 18mm wide. Here I've got a couple of elite silicone straps from Bond Bands, and they fit very well on my 5.5 inch wrist. Aftermarket straps might fit better, but you lose the style and taper of the original. Lately, I've enjoyed wearing it on the white silicone strap. However, I think the watch works so much better with the original strap, and I'm considering cutting off the extra bit that sticks out. Overall, this watch wears really well on my small wrist, and if you have larger wrists, I think this watch will look and wear even better. Lastly, let's talk about pricing. This new Casio comes in at 140 AUD or 100 USD. The first watch that comes to mind at this price point is the DW5600 G-Shock. Is the new MWD-110H a more affordable 5600? If we're looking at the recommended retail price of the 5600, I think this new Casio is a more affordable alternative. However, these days you can buy the 5600 on Amazon for around 100 AUD or even under 100 USD, which changes things quite a bit. With a difference of 40 AUD, would you go for the classic 5600 with 200 meters water resistance and a shock resistant case? Or the new Casio with 100 meters of water resistance, a new display, and a steel bezel? I'd love to know which one you would pick. Let me know in the comments. I think maybe in the future, when the 110H is more accessible at places like Amazon and eBay, the prices might drop below the 5600, and I think it might be a better deal. Overall, I think the new Casio MWD110H is a pretty cool watch that's worth considering. The highlight for me is the new layout and legibility of the display. The countdown timer looks fantastic, and the dual time is very useful. Also, I love the colorway and futuristic design of this watch. The new features like the steel bezel, 10-year battery life, and 100 meter water resistance are great, but I think the value of the classic 5600 is hard to beat. I don't own a G-Shock in my collection, and I think this watch fills that gap pretty well. I'm still looking to get the G-Shock 5610 SU Street Utility model. I love the grayed out look of that watch, and hopefully I will add that one to my collection soon. Back to this Casio, what are your thoughts on the MWD110H, and would you add one to your collection? Let me know in the comments. Big thank you to Casio Australia for sending me this watch, and if you want to watch more Casio content, you can check out the video on the screen where I talk about the limited edition Rag & Bone and Casio A1000 collab. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.